Alrighty. Hello.
Hello.
Okay. So our speaker for today, our this month we've been talking about power, wisdom all around, and she wants to introduce herself today. So Miriam Mendoza, welcome. Woo!
Well, thank you again. You couldn't tell, I'm just so excited to be here. And so yes, my name is Miriam Mendoza. I live here in Yakima. I'm a certified life coach, but I kind of have a business of recycling, so because I just love full circle and circular economy kind of stuff. But I originally got my life coaching certificate when I was going through a hard time in my life, and when I discovered how being supportive, being present, and listening, and just the tools that I learned, I really wanted to share that with others and help others along their journey. So today, another thing about myself is I attend over at the Temple Shalom. So I'm currently in conversion process to Judaism. And I think I said this last time I was here too. So
Okay.
I'm still in process. And so today my talk is going to be a little bit different from my other talks that I've done in the past. So I kind of brought in more of my life coaching tools into the topic and did more of that kind of a thing. But as I was exploring the topic for today, power, it was so cool doing all the research and reading about all these different perspectives and of course from the Jewish perspective, which personally I had never really delved into. You know, Judaism is a lot of, here's how the spiritual path and the daily walk. What do you do in the morning? What do you do in the afternoon? What do you do at night? And how do you do that? But really getting into more of the conceptual things, I hadn't really gotten into that yet. So we'll just jump right in. So what is power? What is power? Is it the ability to control things or the ability to control others?
No.
Yeah, it's a really big word. It has like there's a lot of different understandings, right? Is it being able to lord over others? I mean, there's a lot of, like, my husband, he recently visited Mexico, and he said, oh, the control or the power is with the cartels, because if you don't do what they say, they'll just kill you. So it's like almost the ability to like end somebody's life in that perspective. Crazy, right? Wild. Is it the ability to accomplish things? Some people think, oh, that's a powerful person because whatever they set their mind to do, they just do it, right? Right. So we kind of hear this in our day-to-day, in our vernacular, this word power being thrown out. But what does it mean? What is it really talking about? Well, I decided to look into the Hebrew, and I said, well, what is the word power? And I typed it in, and there are 18 words for power in Hebrew.
Whoa.
Wild. I did not even know that. There's a couple that I will focus on today. The first one is koach, and this is one that we say in our daily blessings. And it's, blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who gives strength to the weary, who gives power to the weary or the weak. The second one is oz. The Lord is my strength and my song, Psalm 118:14. That one also is translated more as strength, not necessarily power. But those are like the top two words for power in the Hebrew. And so then I started looking at, okay, what does the scripture really say about power then? Let's try and I wanted to narrow down these 18 words. Which one really denotes, the kind of power that I'm looking for, like real power, like God's power, right? Well, the first time the word power comes up in the Hebrew is in Genesis 7:24. And if anyone has a Bible handy, feel free to read me if you have a different version, because I know there's different versions and different translations. Anybody? Okay, that's okay. I have it written down right here too. So this is the one that says, referring to the flood, it said the waters were mighty over the earth for 40 days. So they covered the earth. They subdued the earth for 40 days. And the Hebrew word is actually gibor. So in the English, I typed in power, and that was the first thing that came up, power. The water was powerful over the earth for 40 days. But then I looked at the Hebrew, and the Hebrew is gibor. It's not even power in Hebrew. Gibor is more like strong or mighty, not really power, more just like dominance. Okay, well, that is not the first word. The first time I see power in the English doesn't even mean power in the Hebrew. Great. And so I go a little next. What's the next time that I see power? The next time we see power is, do you remember the story of Jacob and when he goes with his uncle Laban or Laban? Remember that story? Okay, so I'll give you a little cliff note. So Jacob runs away after tricking his brother Esau out of his blessing. His mother says, go and stay with my brother because, your brother wants to kill you. Jacob stays there. He ends up marrying Laban's daughters, Rachel and Leah. And then Laban kind of starts changing his wages and saying, oh, well, you can keep all the striped ones. No, actually, you can keep all the spotted ones. No, you can keep all the non-spotted ones. And Jacob's just had it. And he says, you know what, wives, we're out of here. He doesn't tell Laban that he's leaving, and he just leaves with his family caravan, just goes. And Laban, he hears about this because Laban was out doing something else. When he gets back, he says, hey, where did everybody go? And Laban takes his guys and they run after Jacob. And it's in Genesis 31:29 where Laban says, I have the power to do whatever I want to you. All that you have is mine. And I'm not going to do anything bad. I can't do anything bad because God told me not to. Mm-hmm. So that I have the power to do whatever I want. I just thought it was more like a threat. When you read it in the English, it just sounds like, I could do all this, but I'm not going to. But in the Hebrew, it's so much more, it's so strong. The Hebrew word that he uses is El, which can mean God. So he's not saying, oh, I could do this, but I'm not going to. He literally says, I have the power. I'm basically your king. I'm basically your God. Your life is in my hands, and you're like my servant. Like, you are in the palm of my hand. I can do whatever I want, but I'm not going to because God told me not to. Just put a whole nother spin on that story. Like, he literally said, like, I'm like a God to you. Crazy. So talk about threatening there. But that's still not the power that I'm looking for. That's like a lording over somebody. That's like, what we were talking about before. Like, I can control you. You are mine. Nah, not really. That's not what I'm looking for. The next time I see the word power is in Genesis 49:4. Power is used like strength. He's talking about his first son, Reuben. He says, Reuben, you're my firstborn. You are powerful. And that's the word oz, okay? Oz. Finally, we get to hear when God uses the word power. This is in Exodus 9:16. God is talking about himself. And he says right here, but it is for this reason I have kept you alive, to show you my power, and so that my name may resound throughout the whole earth. Bonus, who was he talking to when he said that?
It's kind of Reuben.
He was talking to Pharaoh.
Oh.
So this was after all the plagues and everything. He says, Pharaoh, I've kept you alive. I'm going to show you my power. This is koach. This is when God says, this is my power. Koach. So, as you can see, English has one word, power, right? But in Hebrew, we have 18 words for power, and they all mean very nuanced, but very specific things. And as we know from linguistic and anthropological studies, when a language or a culture has many words for one thing, it's really important. Like the Inuit, for example, they have is it 20 words for the word snow? Anybody quote me on that? Don't quote me on that. But really, because in that culture, it's really important to say wet snow, powder snow, the snow that sticks to you, the snow that's falling from the sky, or the snow that's on the ground. It's really important to understand what kind of snow you're talking about. So the same thing applies here. in Judaism, or when we're talking about God and God's power, it's really important to understand what kind of power we're talking about. How are we using the power? How is the power being used? So for the sake of time, I won't go through every single of the different words in Hebrew for power. We'll just focus on the one that I think is the most intriguing, and also the one that is like God's power, right? So that would be koach, as we were talking about earlier in Exodus, when God was talking about his own power, taking ownership of that power, is the word koach. So when I looked up in the Strong's Concordance and tried to break down the word koach, where does it come from, and specifically what does it mean? It's really, really talking about strength in every single sphere of life. Physical, mental, spiritual, capacity, militarily, wealth, production, etc. It is all encompassing. When we use the word koach, it's not just somebody is strong physically. It is all of it. And another part of that is that it is inexhaustible. It is limitless power. And then we can also see in other parts of scripture that this koach, this power, can be transferred. It's not only in reference to God, but actually God can transfer that power to people. When he gives David strength, when he's talking about in Deuteronomy, it's usually followed with a warning. It says, when God transfers power to us, it says right here, you, in Deuteronomy 8:17, you might say in your heart, my power and my strength have given this wealth to me. But remember that it is the Lord your God who gives you koach, the power, the real divine spark power, in order to be able to do any of these things. And we see this over and over where there's a misuse of this koach, not a misuse of strength, like somebody just throws something around, not even with Lavan's case. Like, there's not really these warnings encompassing this koach and that kind of power. It's only when we use koach, divine power, that we have these warnings that say, hey, don't forget that this is divine, holy power that God has given you. So we even see some examples of this. Pharaoh, he actually uses the word koach, and Nebuchadnezzar. They both use the word koach. They tell people, I have the power. All the power, the divine power, comes from me, and everything that you see is mine. You are mine, and everything that I've done is from my power. And we'll see, and look at what happened to them. Yeah. So according to Jewish tradition, it's really important to understand what kind of power we're talking about. You don't want to say, hey, can you call the power company? You don't want to, that's not what we're talking about. Hey, can you pay the power bill? Or I've got the power, like in the song, It could be misleading, and as we've seen in the scriptures, that can be detrimental. That misunderstanding to think that I am the source of my own power, it can be dangerous. As a side note, if you look it up on Google, koach can also mean force, like in a scientific term, but that's modern Hebrew, not biblical Hebrew. So, just so you know. So, what can we as humans do with koach, this divine, limitless power that God bestows upon us every single day? What can we do? Well, it's a big responsibility. When you're speaking to a more religious Jewish person, and you ask them, hey, or you tell them, hey, we'll see you later, they will say, all right, see you later, B'ezrat Hashem. And that means with God's help. And I think my mom used to say this a lot when I was little, but she would say, Lord willing, right? Right? It's a reminder, it's a direct sign or that says, I would love to be there, but I can't do anything on my own. Everything that I can do comes from God. Whether I wake up tomorrow morning, whether I can stand tomorrow morning, all of the above. And actually, the last time I was supposed to do a talk, I lost my voice like 2 days before. So I told Marilyn, yes, I will be there. But in my head, I had to remind myself, if God allows me to be there, if God gives me the koach to be there, and he just said no, okay? So I emailed Chris, yeah, you know what? So that ties into humility. And that ties into the Jewish understanding of how to unlock more koach. When you're teaching your kid to do something like cooking or driving, they need to learn some things first. They need to learn that, hey, this is dangerous, you don't touch this, don't touch that, right? And then you can give them more. You give them more freedom. In Judaism, this concept is very similar. That with the koach that God gives you, if you kind of just throw it around and think that it's yours and that it's, that you can use it to hurt people or all these different things, God's going to kind of restrict how much of that he's going to give you. If you want more of it, if you want to unlock more and bring down more koach into your life, the key is humility. And not humility like in some perspectives you might think, or I've heard, that some people think humility is like, no, people just like step on me, or like I'm nothing. No, humility is actually recognizing and remembering that everything that I am, everything that I have comes from God. Everything. So it's actually, I am strong because of God. I can do this because God has gifted me with this. I am talented because God has given me a wonderful voice, wonderful music abilities, wonderful serving heart, So that is the key, humility. And that's what the Proverbs, and we see over and over and over again. Pride comes before a fall. The pride is the opposite of that kind of humility, which is that all that I can do comes from me and nobody else. It's all mine. And also being strong. Being strong doesn't mean that you can do anything and that you can do everything. A lot of us kind of feel guilty sometimes because, I lost my voice and I wasn't able to, and I had to email Chris at the last minute. But wait a minute. Koach doesn't come from me. It's not my fault necessarily that I lost my voice, right? That came from God. God just said no, and that's okay. I don't need to feel guilty. I don't need to beat myself up because I didn't meet all the commitments that I said that I was going to, or I haven't done all the things that I wanted to do today. I have 4 kids. I can't do all the things that I want to do in the day. And that's just how it goes. But sometimes we can get bogged down with this guilt, thinking that we have the koach. But it doesn't come from us. Our power is our ability to choose to do the best we can with the koach that we are given every single day. That choice that God presents to us every single day. Remember, he says, I place before you life and death. Choose life. That is your power. You can channel your power, which is God's power, into life. Doing the next right thing. Doing the next kind thing. Saying the next kind word. Choosing to say the truth when it's kind of embarrassing, It can be hard. But that's the opportunity that God gives us every day. The koach that he gives us, the strength, the honesty. So, your dad has given you the keys to the car. What are you going to do next?